you told me that your first real 0 to 1 build was actually not SaaS. It was an experience in Brazil's largest children's hospital where you helped build a fundraising function, created a trainee program, sold projects to executives. Can you go back to that chapter and retell that story?
That story starts even one chapter before. My first job was at the American Chamber of Commerce. I was a trainee on the sales program there. Did really well. And then my boss from the American Chamber of Commerce hit me up like a few weeks after he left and said, hey, I'm joining this hospital in Brazil. It's the largest children's hospital, philanthropic organization. And I'm looking to build a small team to start the fundraising department. So Brazil had approved at that time some fiscal incentives that allowed large organizations to send part of their taxes, instead of sending them to the government, send to projects that were pre-approved and would benefit like social
And it's
projects.
actually the essence of philanthropy, right?
Exactly.
Because it has to make sense from the business perspective.
So the hospital had approved a project. It was a big investment at that time, had no clue how to fundraise that money, found a group of young people that also had no clue how to fundraise that money, but had experience selling or had the energy or willing to do it. And then he invited me to, with a group of other 2 people, start to build a plan to fundraise that amount. It was at that time like 10 million reais or something like that. So think about like $3 million at the time. And that for me sounded kind of interesting, right? I was like, interesting social responsibility, build something from scratch. I didn't know at that time, but it was a pretty entrepreneurial experience. Like the hospital is a centenary organization.
Because you did have a playbook, right? Like there was no like initiatives like that you could say, okay, these guys did that and, we can do the same thing.
The incentives were new. There was no people that we could really learn from. But it sounded super exciting. It sounded exciting from the perspective of like generating social impact and building something from scratch. So we started as a team of 3 people. And in the beginning, it was kind of literally sitting with accountants and trying to understand what the hell are those incentives? What do they mean for companies? Like, how do we sell this? In Brazil, there is a lot of like you go with a narrative that is like, look, please, like those children need your help. And so even though the objective
it's like
behind...
almost like a begging and
Exactly.
Everybody's doing you a favor.
Exactly. And that's kind of how nonprofit organizations like operated in Brazil for a long period of time, like this begging approach and so on. And so from the start, we started to understand like, hey, how can we make this something that is interesting? How can we turn that into incentives?
Like a business proposal.
Business proposal, where we go to them and say, hey, you actually have an amount of money that costs you 0. You can direct to a project. You can make a massive social impact. And eventually we can get you your logo in and name a floor of this hospital. We have like 350,000 patients, like 350,000, like the numbers were insane. Like the number of surgeries and atendimentos and like people that were like staying in the hospital, like insane amounts, a lot of visibility. So when we started to understand that from the beginning and really trying to understand how can we make a proposal that is like undeniable. So instead of going and knocking someone's door like, hey, please help the children, they need it a lot. It was like, hey, this is the work that hospital does. It's absolutely unbelievable. And by the way, it costs you 0 to support this initiative. And I can get your logo in this floor that has like insane visibility, and you can like take a lot of this from even like a marketing perspective, right?
So, and it's free, right?
And it's absolutely free. So we started to knock on people's doors and talk to companies. A lot of companies didn't even know those incentives existed at that time.
You correct me if I'm wrong, but while you were trying to nail down this business proposal format, you delivered more than 350 pitches to executives. Is that about right?
Oh, yeah. A lot more than that. But yes, in the first year, I guess, I think that was it. And we're literally trying to move away from like the begging piece to like, hey, how do I deliver value? I actually have a very interesting proposal for your company. We quickly, I think, learned and understand that we couldn't rely only on the social aspect. But if we tied both things together, like I think the exercise behind how I'm going to pitch something that they just can't say no. So that was the initial plan. I said like we would go there and we're going to fundraise, we're going to wrap up that project, and maybe that's going to open doors for the next stages. But after a couple of years, when we nailed that, we actually realized there was a much, much larger opportunity. So literally to continue to scale that, deploy other projects for other audiences, because companies that could use those benefits were super large organizations. But we started to think literally from a portfolio of projects, how can I have small companies to invest? And how can I get individuals to invest? Individuals could also leverage their tax incentives. So we almost started to think from a perspective of a portfolio of projects for the different audiences and how we could craft like a proposal that would be undeniable for each one of them. So that initial story that was supposed to last a couple years ended up turning to 8 years at the hospital. We grew a team of like more than 50 people, and we were fundraising like dozens.
And raised like over $20 million, right?
Yeah. It was literally scaling a bit of a sales organization inside a philanthropic, large hospital. The social impact, growing the team, it turned out to be like an amazing experience.